Disclaimer. Hello everyone and welcome to Bey History, the Beyblade series where we go over the history of Beyblades, see what use we could get out of them and any other cool stuff. That being said, make sure to check out MallofBeys.com because MallofBeys has an extreme sale where there's a 15% discount if you purchase 3 Beyblade X products. Also separately, there is a Beyblade Burst Winter Blowout sale which is 15% discounted on Beyblade Burst products. This is an optional way to support the channel. It helps keeps the channel going and videos like this, so we greatly appreciate it if you're able to check it out and try to get something. Otherwise, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and I appreciate any support regardless. System overview. The face is the top part of the Beyblade that screws the whole Beyblade together. The clear wheel is the plastic part of the Beyblade that depicts a certain motif or whatever it is based on. The metal wheel is the metal wheel, the main part that makes contact against the Beyblades. The spin track can have a specific gimmick, but also determines the height of the Beyblade. And the bottom is basically what determines the movement pattern and the type of Beyblade. The lore, Beyblade mythology, backstory, and origin. Like most things in Beyblade, and especially the Metal Fight generation, this is based off of the constellations. Bixes was based off of the many constellations that are up there in the stars, with Pixis, which the name comes from Latin, which is a mariner compass. Beffal is basically comes from pavo, which translates from Latin into peacock. Capricorn comes from Capricornus constellation, which name translates from Latin into horned goat. Horogium, or as the Metal Fight name is Horogium, is basically comes from the Latin of clock. Now, Kerbecs is the only special one out of all of this because it is based off of the Greek mythology of the guard dog of Hades, the three-headed hound. Now, anime, manga, and product origin. Now, what exactly is the Maximum series? The Maximum series is essentially a sub-line that was introduced in Metal Fight Explosion, where these Beyblades are basically the best of a specific attribute that Takara Tomy gives them. Now, basically the whole advertisement goal here is that they basically create all these stock combinations that are the best possible that they ever created. With the Kerbecs owner, Damien, in the anime, he was recruited by Hades Inc. and put under an arrangement program, which is basically Beyblade steroids, and it basically enhances a blader's ability to sync with their Beyblade. He simply follows orders and is sadistic in his nature with his actions done in the animation. In the manga, Damien is manipulated into joining Hades and eventually, becomes deluded, and they do whatever it takes to win Beyblade, to help make them see the light, and that you don't have to be a psychopath to win Beyblade or takes people's souls, which he does do that actually. Jack is actually anime only. Essentially, he's recruited by Hades Inc. and he's a Beyblade artist, right? So thanks to the power of the arrangement system, he basically gets deluded with expressing himself through the Beyblade that's given to him to kind of use that as his twisted art form. Zio is basically manipulated into joining. There's a lot of manipulation in Hades Inc. into joining Hades Inc. Because their best friend Toby needs to be treated and basically undergoing an arrangement system to become a better blader. Now in the manga, Zio basically just joins the evil side just because it's more fun for him. He has a sadistic personality similar to that of Damien from the animation. Now, Faust is basically the twisted anime persona of Toby because he was someone who's very sick and ill, and he was basically taken in by Dr. Ziggurat, promised medical treatment to help him heal. After he went through all this process, he eventually becomes Faust and is manipulated by Ziggurat and controlled by Hades Inc. But the thing is that Ziggurat does not actually exist in the manga. Instead, basically what the anime does is they kind of split. Like Toby is this character and Faust is this separate entity, and Ziggurat, like they separate all of these things, because Faust is basically what Ziggurat is in the anime, a ruthless business person that would kill anyone if given the chance. Lastly, aside from maybe individual parts, the actual wheels from the Maximum series don't really get to the 0G life. They only really just do super well throughout the 40 era, so that's why you'll hear zero mention of anything from the end of Metal Fight unless something specific. Now, that being said, let's get on with the bays.
November 20th, 2010, Flame Bixes was released.
Now, the Maximum Series gimmick for Flame Bixes is that it's a very tall Beyblade. More specifically, its spin track that was released being the tallest ever, 230 23 millimeters. Now, the Bixes clear wheel is pretty interesting because it's a precise wheel with two sections being cut away. So your best use is like attack-oriented stuff that you'd be using for like best case, or really anything that you want to like expose specific contact points on. So for an example, stuff like Vulcan. So it's kind of like this niche use for like attack setups, more specifically Vulcan, like Vulcan BD145RF. Now, Flame is still alive during this point in the Beyblade era of November 2010. It's a very solid wheel for stamina. It has outwards weight distribution and very strong stamina for stamina combinations because it has a tapered edges around it. Now, basically, this was paired up with 230 and Coat Sharp, or even Metal Ball, but the issue is with Flame is that because of the fact you have Hell and eventually Basalt that kind of outclass it, Flame 230 doesn't really get any time to live. However, for an example, in the fan organization of WBO's Beyblade Metal Fight Limited format, Flame does see quite a bit of use on the 230 combinations. This is due to the fact that things like Hell and Basalt are banned. Moving on from there, we have the one and only 230 spin track. Now, this is a very special spin track because very tall. It's very tall. The tallest spin track in the game and substantially thicker than a lot of the other standard non-gimmicky spin tracks. Its height basically allows to avoid metal on metal contact on many shorter bays trying to hit it. It'll only hit the spin track, allowing 230 to basically give whatever combination it's on more stamina. Now, 230 is the problem child of its era, simply because of the fact that it's one of the best stamina tracks in the game, and what allowed it was a combination of factors like raised wheels, like Flame, later Hell, and etc. They basically had the outwards weight distribution to give stability and stamina, and with tips like Coat Sharp or Metal Ball, made it even more prominent because you had Flame 230CS, eventually Hell 230CS, and it goes so on. Now, basically, bays that were on 125 or low height kind of got slapped around and really struggled. Whether this was many low height stamina or defense combinations, I would pretty much struggle with this generally, or even kind of many really low height attack stuff just can't work as really effective. Like, to really take down 230 and to kill it, you would need 145 tracks to be able to actually do some damage towards it to make that contact that you need to be able to actually take it down. But it had use through many years. It was a very prominent stamina part in many combinations. It was the winner of the World Beyblade Championship, and many players in the WBO from the events of 2010 to 2011 used some variant of Hell, Basalt, or Flame 230 up until the release of the later 40 wheels. Obviously, one big issue with the track could be because it's so tall, it could potentially tip and kind of downward spiral to death and die. But considering there's so many upsides and how rare that maybe is for a downside, overall, it does have some pretty great use. For an example, during this era for some combinations, let's go watch it. Pegasus CH120 RF versus Flame 230, Hell 230, Basalt 230. You will basically notice that the 230 thing is very tricky to take down, and the heavier that these wheels gets and the more we have to go into the deep end with the 230, the more struggling that we can do. In the 40 era, Hell 230 Metal Ball versus Duo Bearing Drive, where this combination is able to fairly compete against the Duo and manage to maybe do kind of decent to kind of destabilize and outspin it. And, you know, as well, like let's say Hell 230 CS against like very Eris R145 rubber flat, where it does manage to be able to kind of compete fairly well against the Hell, but obviously can still struggle, but just goes to show how well this stuff ages even later on in the 40 era. Now we get to wide defense. Now wide defense it's kind of on the edge of its life right now. It's obviously still a very useful stamina part. That's great because it has high life after death, basically that it can spin a little bit more at the end. Great for stamina / defense combinations. And it was still relevant during this time. Really, if you're going to be getting this release, the main highlight, I mean, the WD is fine, but there's so many releases that have wide defense. Really just the 230 spin track by itself that's really makes it so special for this release. Otherwise, you know, the Bixes clear wheels kind of whatever, and yeah, Flame, if you're into the WBO stuff, then for the fan run stuff, yeah. If you're talking about in general, in the era specific, then technically no, but for WBO, yes.
Beffal, released December 28th, 2010.
Now, Beffal has the cool gimmick for the Maximum series of really good stamina. Now, the thing is that Beffal I have bias towards because it looks the coolest, but aside from the tip, it kind of sucks, man. What do I mean by this? The Beffal clear wheel, well, it's very pretty to look at, very nice design with the feathering and all that stuff, but it's really average in weight and shape, and there's no real special use or presence during that era. Killer is a balance type metal wheel that doesn't really have that special of a shape to do anything particularly useful for balance type use. Now, the spin track upper wing 145 is where this kind of gets depressing because basically it has, first of all, very beautiful design of these very jagged wings, but what really pisses me off is that I don't know how TT can fuck it up because they have hell Kerbecs with the BD145 in design, but the upper wing is like they didn't follow that same philosophy how we're designing the spin tracks. Now basically this has two modes: defense mode where the wings are pushed upwards towards the wheel, or attack mode where it's basically exposed downwards. Not to mention, it gets even more embarrassing for upper wing when you compare it to stuff like triple roller 145, switch 145, or even rubber 145, because 3.52, 3.58, 3.79, 4.12. So this is outclassed either in weight or for actual shape viability on combos to be used for. I guess you could just say the best mode is maybe the defense, I don't know, because the stamina use, like otherwise it's not really worth using, and it's really disappointing that they could have had this had a lot more exposed with a wider diameter, but they just gave it like too small. Now, whereas the biggest highlight for this release is the Eternal Wide Defense Performance Tip, because this combines Eternal Sharp and Wide Defense, where now it's Wide Defense, but the bottom part has a little free spinny part. This basically increases the stamina by an incredible amount and is the best stamina tip in the game, or at least one of the best stamina tips in the game. It basically has increased life after death, and there are so many combinations. For an example, NL Drago LW145EWD against Earth WD. Prime example of what would be used during that era because of the fact that Meteor is an equalizer. Paired up with a really great stamina tip, it can do absolute wonders. Now, it did see a little bit more use once 230 saw a reduced amount of use in play. Now, some combinations, for an example, you could have an example here for the late game of Metal Fight. You could have a Genbu Synchrom 90 Eternal Wide Defense against a duo bearing drive combination. Now, you'll notice that EWD, for all that period of time, still such a solid stamina tip to use, being there at a top contender use compared to some of the great other stamina combinations you can use in the game. And this Genbu Synchrom is a pretty good example. But yeah, it just goes to show the tip aged very, very well and had very good use throughout Metal Fight. So overall, its real use was just at the fact that, well, the stamina tip, because otherwise the whole base kind of shit. But it's beautiful looking, so if it was style points, it gets a 10 out of 10, but I can't be biased here.
Kerbecs was released December 28th, 2010.
Now, Kerbecs is basically that it is 50 millimeters wide. It is the widest Beyblade during its time. That is the Maximum Series gimmick. Now the clear wheel of Kerbecs is a heavy 3-sided clear wheel that has some chains interlocked into its design. And basically it is a very heavy clear wheel that is pretty awesome. It could be used on defensive metal wheels and mainly on 3-sided metal wheels. And its general purpose was basically, it's a heavy clear wheel, so you basically kind of use it in like, generally 3-sided stuff, attack stuff. Very useful clear wheel, very awesome. Now Hell is where things get really crazy, because with the Hell fusion wheel, it's a stamina type fusion wheel, and basically it had so much viability in the debut if it's released. First of all, the fact that it was a wide enough blade and it was 3-sided mean that it had a lot of good use for attack combinations and low height. Not only that, but once combined with a special unique interaction gimmick of the Boost Disc 145 spin track, you basically have it where you have normal, where basically it is exposed downwards, which really doesn't work too well for Hell, or well, it works really well for Hell. And what you should be using Hell with generally is the BD145 boost mode, where basically it completes Hell shape, it fills in those little gaps, and it kind of makes it purely circular. Now, basically any Hell BD145 combination can almost get used at the time because it's just very good for defense, stamina. Hell, dude, even you could slap this on attack stuff. Now, Hell was generally used on stuff like 230 Coat Sharp, but the reason for this because of the fact that it's a wide, hours weight distributed metal wheel, and the weight's spread out. But there are also variants of this like BD145 Coat Sharp, BD145 Wide Defense, BD145 Rubber Flat that was used. And essentially, it was just extremely viable overall in its general purpose for what it could get used for. I mean, we can look at combinations like Hell BD145 Wide Defense against like a Pegasus combination, and the stamina looks pretty reliable. Even nearly stock Hell with like Wide Defense against like an Earth combo we keep on using, you'll see that it's pretty damn good. Even something like stock Hell Kerbecs against an Earth combination, it still dominates. But not only that, now we basically get to Boost Disc. Now what Boost Disc's benefit basically is that this is like one of the heaviest spin tracks that they released, and this really helped attack and defense because it's a very wide in diameter spin track. This basically helped the defense's problem in Beyblade, where the defense spin tracks weren't as exposed and weren't as wide in diameter. But because of the fact that Boost Disc was, this basically gave defense combos a lot more meta relevancy because of how large and wide it is, pause. But not only that, for attack combinations, for maybe the lesser stuff, because BD145 is very heavy, it can help compensate for that for the weight, because the discs basically help pushing out stuff. So it was heavily versatile in what you could be using this for. And honestly, you really gotta look at this stuff and just be wowed at what Takara Tomy was able to accomplish with this to be able to just kind of really evolve the meta. Now, it was used on many combinations. For an example, as I will be listing very quickly, Basalt BD145 Rubber Flat, Basalt BD145 Coat Sharp, for an example, an attack combo of what I just said, defense stamina combination, Vulcan BD145 Rubber Flat, an attack combination, Barriers BD145 Rubber Flat or Metal Flat, a very unique attack combination, Scythe BD145EDS, a unique kind of stamina, kind of defense combination, or Gravity BD145 RF or Metal Flat, a very unique attack combination, or Lightning BD145, where there are so many BD145s on Rubber Flats, like that Lightning combination that are part of the BD145 crew. It got the nickname of the Lightning Tank, by the way, because of the fact that Lightning hits really good, and BD145 helps assist attack types, so it is a very good pairing. And not only that, but it just lasted so well. For an example, at the end game, let's say 0G, a Y-Vang on BD145 RDF, or variants of BD145 RDF that basically made the game a little bit cancer, because the lad was so strong with BD145 on equalizer combinations, for an example, that it was a pretty scary thing. Now, pretty much where we get to kind of the end parts of Kerbecs, the only real part that's kind of dog shit is the defense spike, or defense sharp. It's basically a worse defense, or even worse wide defense. It's basically surrounded by this outer plastic perimeter with a tiny little sharp there, and it just has worse balance and stamina and no real purpose or use there. If you somehow didn't own a defense or a wide defense, maybe, but otherwise it was kind of crap. Now, I do want to mention some era-appropriate battles. For an example, in the Metal Fight 4D, We got like Heliquario 230MB against like Scythe Cancer 90 Rubber Sharp. It destabilizes it and outspins it. We have that same combination both Coat Sharp against a Fang Kerbecs 100 Rubber Flat, and it manages to take those hits well and, you know, last like pretty good. These are pretty like well-aged bays. Not to mention the duo versus the Hell 230, where Hell can either destabilize it or it can outspin it, but just goes to show how good Hell's stamina was during its time and how well defensively it could even work. So basically, Hell just offers so much through its clear wheel, through its metal wheel, through its spin track, that it's really hard to say no to any of this other than maybe Defense Sharp, which I... Come on. Come on. Screw Capricorne.
Released January 22nd, 2011.
Maximum Series Gimmick. For Spiral Capricorn, its unique highlight was basically saying that, hey, this part right here, it's the best for attack. With the parts that are offered on this Beyblade, like with Metal Flat, it basically allows you to be able to perform great upper attack and even smash attack. Clear Wheel Capricorn. Now, this isn't exactly a new clear wheel, since obviously the original one released on Storm Capricorn. With Capricorn, basically, it's just average on everything, whether it be stamina, defense. If you wanted to use it for attack combinations, the horn's it's kind of aggressive, but not really warranted to be used. Since it's pretty much average for everything, its presence is kind of just non-existent because it's average. You have no real reason to use it if other clear wheels are more beneficial to be used over it. Metal Wheel. Screw. Screw is a 3-winged fusion wheel. When it released, obviously the advertisement was like, hey, this shit's pretty good for attack. They're very good part. Now, it has oval wings that allow for good upper smash attack against taller bays, and the presence for this era is pretty interesting because of the fact that Screw kind of didn't get that much attention on it because people were kind of downing it. Eventually, people were able to see the use of this Beyblade because later discovered that Screw actually is better for upper smash attack and for even stall combinations. Obviously, when paired with a clear wheel that didn't block for its contact points. So for an example, you have things like Screw Gemio, Screw Uranus, or even Screw Susanoo on setups like, let's say, CH120 RF or R2F, where all these clear wheels either can benefit with either them being not as exposed, or in the case of Susanoo, where it's able to just be super, super aggressive and hit really, really well with a good pairing of it. Spin Track 90. So 90 is not a new part that debuts on this Beyblade. It was previously released right at the early ages of Beyblade. It's basically used for like low height stamina or attack combinations. Your benefit with using a 90 height is that you're able to slip underneath stuff. Of course, your only real worry could just generally be potentially scraping, but otherwise a pretty solid low height track to use. Performance tip, Metal Flat. Now, Metal Flat is a variant of the flat tip that replaces the plastic contact surface with a small metal dowel, and it adds a little bit of height to the tip overall. Now, despite the thoughts that metal might be too low for friction compared to, let's say, plastic tips, Metal Flat is actually pretty much capable of holding an offensive flower pattern for, you know, extended periods of time. Although obviously slower than like your rubber flats, it still had some pretty good use. Now, Metal Flat's ability was basically to maintain stamina on their tornado ridge, and it basically excels in stalling. Now, stalling is essentially where you just go around the ridge and you just keep going around to get to the middle of the stadium. You're just trying to like wait it out till your opponent dies. Albeit it's not that entertaining, but I guess if you want to torture your opponent, power to you, my friend. Now, what makes this actually really interesting is where it's such a flexible part for its notable archetype, because of the fact that you can have it to flower for offensive stallers, its ability to hold the ridge tightly for defensive stallers, and for long life for stamina stallers. So in a way, Metal Flat's very beneficial because it actually covers so many types, multi-purpose use, and Beyblade combo making, which is a pretty neat part, I must say. So if, let's say you're in a pure attack context here, and let's say you just really don't like using those rubber flats. Well, Metal Flat's benefit is that while it's not maybe as crazy as a rubber flat, you have the advantage of stamina at your disposal. Now, it is a must-have part because of the fact that you are optimizing staller combinations. It serves as a great alternative to rubber attack tips for bladers who are less skilled or just looking for more control and stamina. It has overall great versatility, and the only real apparent weakness is its lack of life after death. Essentially, what that means is kind of like the end game when the bay's wobbling at the end. While it can't really last too long once you get near the end of Metal Fight, it at least had some pretty good use in WBO's limited format, like for an example, Bakushin Leon on, like, let's say, a 90 metal flat, and you would use a metal face setup where the plastic's in the middle and the metal's on the outside. Due to the fact that it comes with the spiral metal wheel, the 90 spin track, and the metal flat performance tip, this is a highly recommended must-have Beyblade if you are collecting or if you are trying to get into competitive. With Basalt, its unique gimmick was that it was the heaviest Beyblade to be released, with the fusion wheel in specific, and during that time, it basically was like some insane heavy weights creep. Now, to go over the parts, the Tempo or Horogium clear wheel, it wasn't really too special. It's got like this weird imbalance to it. You just really use it for like attack combinations, I guess. Some real niche purpose use. Basalt is a metal cylinder with a spiral staircase. Now, you know, it has unique parts in design with like kind of like these little indents inside of it, kind of going inside where you see a spiral staircase. Now, because this was so heavy compared to the actual metal wheels, Kuritomi had to nerf this design by basically having a spiral staircase. So while the defense is good, the stamina would not nearly be as broken as it would be if it was actually filled, which a filled Basalt would be very, very scary, actually. Now, aside from that, since Basalt is extremely heavy due to its mass shape, it is extremely good on defensive combinations. For an example, your 230 metal ball or your 230 coach sharp. And due to its sheer weight and ability, it was so good for defensive stuff. Not to even mention some other general stuff like even defense like BD145, Coat Sharp, which saw use during part of that era at the end in like 40 era especially, or Basalt BD145 RF was also pretty solid to use. And Basalt's benefit is that there's so much versatility on it because of the weight. And while it doesn't nearly have like true raw stamina, it's kind of nuts. Like, it's a bay purposely made heavy so that you can't try to kill it. But I do like that idea because I feel like defense should generally have some sort of advantage towards it, to where maybe the stamina is it should be worse than stamina types, but good enough where attack types can kind of struggle against it. And I do love that idea. Now, where Kuritomi gets some shit from me is that they reuse 145 and WD, which 145 by this time, the basic track by itself, really does have no purpose to be here. Aside from that, Basalt obviously has quite a bit of use thanks to the Basalt fusion wheel. I mean, really just the Basalt fusion wheel, and I guess Tempo if you really want to fight for it. But aside from that, pretty cool. Final thoughts. So with the Maximum series, I think when it's like this goal of like achieving the specific purpose of it's got to be the best of this category, I really like that idea where it's kind of like this kind of like dangerous special specific series type of stuff. And I think the marketing on it was pretty strong, and I think it was very unique for what it had to offer. But aside from that, I want to give my thanks and give flowers to anyone who's able to help out. Shout out to my boy Kyo for helping out with any general translation context work, and shout out to Sky Shu for generally helping with a lot of the scripting, and as well shout out to Kyo as well for also helping with that and just so much stuff. It's really thanks to them that I'm able to do videos like this, so God bless them so much. Shout out to Dan for general metal fight advice when recording this, and as well shout out to Cake for general metal fight advice for combinations and that type of stuff. And I really do appreciate all the help from the community to make these videos what they are. Now, this video is very special to me for many reasons, but you know, I put a lot of my heart and soul into this, especially on this day in particular, so hope you're able to enjoy the video. And you know, Bay histories do take a lot out of me to do, so if you're able to support us by checking out the store, getting something from the store, because that kind of helps keep the channel alive, I would greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, if you can like or comment, that would also work out. And please check out the other videos of Bay history. I know these videos are really long, but I hope you're able to enjoy or have a good listen to them. And keep in mind that obviously you can't go over every single possible metal fight combination. So if I didn't list some specific combo, you know, it is what it is. But that is where we're going to be ending off this video. I want to say take care, everyone. Here's to hoping for a better tomorrow, and stay safe. Bye.